Hey everyone, my name's Souza. I am a solution architect on the fast track team at Microsoft. We are part of the engineering team, and today I have with me Jeremie Wride. Jeremie, you want to say hi?
Hi, everybody. Jeremy Wride, also a member of the Fast Track Solution Architect team, as part of the um, engineering team focusing on Dynamic CE, and we're going to talk a little bit about field service and some data today. And so, Carl, we see an opportunity where a lot of customers or salespeople or even internal people at Microsoft have a need for sample data for demoing or testing purposes. They want to reuse data sets over and over again, but it's kind of locked down and it doesn't really give them um, demo specific information or uh, data
Meaningful information,
yeah, that's
right?
meaningful, right? So
Yeah.
so what
hmm
can we do about that?
Yeah, so what we did on Fast Track here is we built a way, kind of a solution, I guess, a way to make meaningful sample data. So if you think about customers all around the world, right, and even around the US or wherever you are in the world, previously when you'd install sample data, you'd install this sample data that would be located in like Seattle area, right? Like a Contoso type thing, or it might be somewhere else, right? But if you're based in like anywhere else in the world, does that really make sense? So when you're looking at that data, you're like, I don't know where these locations are. So especially from a field service perspective, right? You're kind of looking and you don't really know and understand these streets and things like that. So what we have done is we've been able to utilize Copilot, and we're going to show you how to do this today, how to build your own sample data so that it makes sense to your organization and your location and where you live. So, Jeremy, you want to tell us about central location and how that comes into play here?
So sure, yeah. Typically in field service, you'll you'll segregate data or split up areas, regions, or territories, which is where geographically defined areas in which your frontline workers will operate and how you're going to segregate your data to get those users to operate within a certain region. And what we want to do is pick a central spot that we can define so that we can parameterize this data that we want to generate so that it's more meaningful to us.
Cool. Okay, great. So what we have here on the screen, this is actually Bing Maps, right? So if you go to bing.com/maps, what you can do is you can just type in any location that you want and you'll bring the map up. And what we can do with the map is we can actually define that central location that we're going to go ahead and pass over to Copilot. So here I have New York City. If I zoom in here, what we're going to do, we'll take our central location as being, let's say Rockefeller Center here, right? So I'm going to click on Rockefeller Center, and if I actually just drop, you see the pin there. If I just right click on this, we actually get a GPS coordinate here. Okay. So here I can just go ahead and copy this. So this is the latitude and longitude. And now if I go over to Copilot, so this is copilot.microsoft.com, right? And I can actually use this latitude and longitude to create a prompt. So what I'm going to do now is
Hey,
actually go over
Carl,
to a
can
prompt I
anybody do
made.
this?
Yeah, really anyone can do this because pretty much anyone has access to copilot.microsoft.com, right? So this is the public facing Copilot. And what we're going to do, we're just going to ask these questions to the Copilot to bring back some of this sample data that will actually import into Dynamics later. Okay. So here's a prompt that I have, and I'm just going to paste in here, Control V, and it's going to put in the latitude and longitude. I'm going to copy this over here and paste this into Copilot. And so, Jeremy, tell us what this prompt actually does.
So yeah, what we've done is we put together a query of information that we're passing to Copilot to help us build the data set that we want, right? And in this specific query, we're looking at accounts. which are, your customer data that you would set up for your billing or service accounts in which you're going to set up the work to do. And so we've kind of just given you a little bit of a template here.
Very cool. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and run this prompt here. And Copilot is going to generate these accounts. It generates so quickly here. It's really cool. And what I've found actually when I run this is you see the account name here is account one, account two, account three. So it's created 20 accounts. Sometimes it actually creates these really creative names of the companies. In this case, it sometimes also just doesn't do that, and it'll just do account one and two and the more boring names, you know. But what we have here is if we look at a line here, right? So we have this account one, we have an address. It's a fake address that we've asked for. It's a real city, it's a real state and zip code, and it's actually produced real GPS coordinates here. So these accounts are within 50 miles of the Rockefeller Center one that we used, right? So I'm going to go ahead and copy this by just clicking on this copy button here. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and open up Notepad and paste this in. And I'm just going to save this file now. I'm going to put this over here and just call it accounts.txt. Okay. So we have the account text file that was created. So we have a list of accounts. We're going to use those later. But the next thing we're going to do is create some contacts. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up this list here of CSV contacts and paste these into the Copilot. So Jeremy, you want to tell us what this prompt is all about?
Yeah, so basically we're trying to get information that matches up related to the accounts that we've already created, right? And we're those people that we interact with at those customers, we want to capture that information too, and we need Copilot to help us collect that data as well. So we're creating just another prompt using the same data formatting that we did for the accounts to collect information on contacts. And you can see we've got plugs in here to link those accounts and contacts.
Cool. Let me go ahead and run this one. And what I like about this is we didn't actually have to say like name out the accounts specifically because Copilot already knows that it generated those in the last prompt, right? So we just need to say, hey, create these accounts no more than 5 miles to any of the accounts. It already knows it was the previous ones we're talking about. And so here we have another CSV file. So this is really cool. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to go ahead and paste this into another notepad over here and save this. And this one will be called contacts. Okay, so now we have two CSV files ready to go. And then the final one we're going to do in this example, when we're creating our Copilot, when we're creating our sample data, is to do with work orders. So I'm going to copy this here and paste this in. And this is really field service specific. So Jeremy, you want to take us through this one?
Yeah, so once we've got the customers that we want to do service for, we need some work for them to do in order to see how the system is going to operate. And the work orders is basically a collection of the work that needs to be done by a frontline worker or a group of workers. And so what we've done is we've created a way to uh, create a bunch of work that will then go into the system automatically as unscheduled. And so you'll see in this query, we're actually defaulting in some hard-coded values. Um, we want to make sure that we are able to link the data to what we call configuration data in the system. So we have incident types, which are like our templates for the work orders, and we can pass in or assign the work orders that we're creating to a specific set of incident types that we want to use in our demo data. And you can define what those parameters are as you build out your query.
Very cool. Let me go ahead and run this one. Okay, so it's building out 5 work orders for each account, and it's assigning a random work order number here, which is cool. So there's our accounts. Then we have the primary incident type. So I've gone ahead and said pick one of these three. So you may want to, if you're running this with your own data, you might want to change this to have your own primary incident types here. But we're basically saying pick any of these random three. And then we have a work order type, and we happen to have 2 types in the system there. And we're just saying, hey, go ahead and Copilot, you go ahead and choose one of these two, make it random, right? So this gives us our data. We're going to copy this, and we're going to go ahead and paste this into a notepad. And this one we're going to call work orders. Okay, so we have 3 CSV files. So now the fun part, right? Well, maybe that was the fun part. The next part.
It's pretty cool that Copilot generated all that data.
It is amazing when you think about it. And we're going to see this really come out now when we import it into Dynamics. So the next thing is to import this. So we're just going to do a quick import of each of these 3 files. So I'm just going to go ahead and select the accounts first. This is the first one we'll need because contacts are kind of tied to the accounts. And I'm just going to go ahead here and select here the account table. So that's the one we're mapping to. And then now we just gotta go ahead and just map each of these fields to the account fields. So the first one's going to be the name. We got city over here, latitude. This one's going to be street 1, longitude, postal code, which is the zip. And we have the state. Okay, so we have everything mapped. I think that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and click next and submit. Okay, so the accounts have now been completed, and this could take a few minutes, couple of minutes, depending on your system. So it's been completed now on our side. And really the next thing we want to do now is we're going to go ahead and import some contacts. So we're going to, again, pick up the contacts file that we created this time. We'll click next, and we'll go ahead and select contacts here. So this is the contact table. Go ahead and click next. And here we have more mappings. So I'm going to do last name, city, latitude, longitude, street 1, zip, state.
Does the order that we
name.
import these in matter, Carl? Is there a reason we don't do the contacts first?
Yes, actually, that's a great question, Jeremy. So the reason is you can see here that I'm selecting the service account now, right? So this service account is actually going to be the company name, and it's a lookup over to the account here. So if we tried to do this where the account did not exist in the system already, then it's going to throw an error, and it's not going to allow us to import the contacts in this example, right? So that's why we do it in this case. If we weren't mapping this field, then for example, if you're importing technicians and they were not associated with a service account, then yeah, we wouldn't need to do that. You could import in any order you wanted.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click next, and we'll just go ahead and let this run. And just again, this may take a couple of minutes on your side, but we'll come back in a second. Okay, so now we can see that this has been completed, and the error here was, so we have 3 errors out of 20, right? So 17 successfully imported, 3 did not, and you can go ahead and take a look in the link here and see why they did not import. So you may have this on your side. The most likely situation is probably that this contact already existed in the system, right? So if that's the case, you could always check the checkbox that says override it. But again, keep in mind, this is sample data. So you're not doing this in production. You want to do this in a dev environment. And it's really just for demo purposes. Okay, so the last one we're going to do is the work orders. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the work order file this time that we generated. I'm going to go ahead and click next. And this time we will map this out to the work order table. And so this is kind of interesting. So Jeremy, looks like we have some use defaults here. So what's going on with that?
Yeah, so within field service, there's a number of fields that you may or may not want to populate based on your generated sample data. You may want to just leverage some out of the box defaults, in which case you can skip the process of mapping that. In our scenario, there's a few things that we didn't provide as parameters to the to Copilot to generate for us. And so for those, we're just going to leave them as not mapped. But you can
Okay.
extend this example that we provided and populate other fields like the price list. Um, there's statuses, uh, the work order type. There's a number of things that you could extend this sample with.
Gotcha. Okay, interesting. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and map the ones that we have here. So we have the price list. We have the service account over here. That's going to be this one, mapping to the account. And then we have the system status. Looks like we don't have that. So I'm going to leave that as use default. The taxable, we don't have that. I'm going to keep that as use default. The work order number, that's actually the name here. So we're going to use that one. And then the work order type we have here is the work order type. Okay. That's going to be a lookup as well. So the only one that's missing here is the incident type, primary incident type. So I'm going to go over here and we do have that over here mapping to this incident type there. Okay, so I think we have everything. I'm going to go ahead and click next. And it says some required fields are not mapped. This may result in some records not being imported. So that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and click next and submit. And let's see how this looks. Great. So it looks like our work orders have been imported.
That's awesome. So we've imported accounts and contacts and work orders. Can we see that data in the system?
Yes, we can. All right. Here's what we're going to do. So over here, I have the field service app in Dynamics 365. Let me go over to accounts here. And I have a bunch of accounts here, but I actually have a view for accounts that were created today. And so if I go ahead and click on these, we can see these are all the accounts that we just created, right? So we have 20 rows created today. And you can see the city here, right? So each of these, if I go into any one of these accounts, we can actually see the address here that's come in. And so these are the fields that we mapped. So we have all this data in our system. Also, if I go over to contacts, we have the same deal. If I look at contacts created today and I select, you can see actually the accounts here are listed. So Barbara Harris over here has been assigned or kind of linked to this account that was created previously, right? So that's the link there. So that's really cool. And we have an address here for her as well. And really the final one is work orders. If I click on work orders and I look at work orders created today, here's our random work order numbers. Here's our primary incident type. So Copilot has gone and created these randomly the way that we've told it to, and it has assigned it to these accounts. And so now we have work orders in the system. So I think that's all pretty cool.
So Carl, let's take a moment and see what's next, right? I wanna
Hmm.
see those work orders in action or where they are, so we can plan out scheduling for that. So if we go to the schedule board,
Schedule
um,
board,
we
yes.
should be able to see those on a map, right?
Very
Uh,
cool.
and
Yes.
and show that.
Cool. Actually, yeah, that's a great idea. So actually, here are the work orders that are being displayed here. So you can see that we created 5 work orders per service account, and they're showing on the map. So again, this makes a lot of sense because, if I lived in somewhere in Europe, for example, or Asia or Africa or anywhere, I could create this contextual data that's specific to my organization and I can actually see like, oh yeah, I know that address over there. I know how long it's going to take me to go to these different routes, right? So I think this is like a really interesting way to create sample data for your organization.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And maybe you don't have this use case where you have 5 work orders per account that we've done. You can change the parameters around and manipulate the data in such a way that it means more to you for your demo. That's kind of the whole goal here, right? Is to leverage, excuse me, these templates to go into Copilot and have it create the data that is meaningful for your sample data. And you saw when we were looking at some of those forms, right? There were some empty fields. You could extend it to add additional fields and populate more of that information so that it's more meaningful when you give your demos. And you can even go further with this, right? If we wanted to um, use the same concept to import our frontline workers, we could create a list of frontline workers that we would then import doing the same thing, and you can leverage Copilot to help you do that. And then once you've got the work orders generated, then you can um, manually schedule it. You could use RSO to auto book those, or you could even go back to the same process and create bookings for those resources and work orders that you've imported as well using the power of Copilot.
Very cool, very cool. So I think a couple of takeaways that you just said that I really liked. So extending this to frontline workers. So all you would need to do is really import contacts again. Just don't tie them to accounts, right? And then those will be brought in as contacts. And then you can set those up as bookable resources. And then you're away. You have technicians and frontline workers that are ready to go and start working on these specific work orders, right?
Yeah, you could
Um,
even create the bookable resources with the same pattern, looking up the contacts that you've created with Copilot.
Very, very nice. And the other thing I really liked is, you talked about extending this. And I think what's very interesting about what we're seeing here is that this doesn't even have to apply to field service if you don't want it to, right? I think field service is an excellent use case for this type of sample data. But really, if you're using like sales or customer service, you could pretty much use the same pattern that we've shown here today to create sample data in your org.
Yeah, leads, opportunities, accounts. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jeremy, for showing this and talking through this with us. And I think that this is again great for organizations to try out. So everyone, try this out in your org and let us know how it goes.
Yeah, thanks, Carl.